2, 1.
Greetings, happy birthday to one and all. Probably wondering whose birthday it might be today. Well, it's the world's birthday. As the world turns. Yeah, as the world turns. ATW something T. Right, today's the 25th of Elul, 5/7. 7/8, the last class. Last class of the year, the day 5,778 years ago, right during this time, the world was created. The first day of creation was actually today. 6 days later, Rosh Hashanah, is when Adam and Eve were created. So happy birthday, one and all. I hope somebody brought a cake, candles at least. Put another candle on the birthday cake. Okay, today's title of the class is a question mark at the end. Is America really the kingdom of kindness? Is America really the kingdom of kindness? In small letters, in parentheses below, this is really part 2 of have the Jews been out-trumped by Trump? Okay, but don't spread that too much. People like new titles. And so here we go. We're going to summarize. By the way, in all of our classes here, feel free, you could join any class. Because of the fact that it's part 2, 3, we always try, with God's help, to give a summarization of what was, so you know what is and what will be. So you could come in any time, and you don't have to be worried, well, I wasn't at the first class. We try to summarize before we go on. So open up your ears, clean them out if you need to. We're going to summarize and try to remember, because it's a little bit more strain on the brain here, so try to remember the principles and the points here. We're going to summarize so far what we had. We had 11 different cases in the Tanakh, in the Bible, where we saw very unusual incidents. We saw what seemingly seems to be kindness of Gentiles or nations, and in the end, some reason, which we don't know yet, for some reason, all these 11 cases where either private citizens, Gentiles, or nations did some kind of benevolent act of kindness, charity, or even something towards a Jew, or even some way of honoring God. Who paid the price? It was bad news for the Jews. This is very interesting. A Gentile does a good deed, a nation does a good deed, and who pays the price? The Jews? What's going on behind closed doors here? Point number 2, the source to understand what's really happening here. We quoted King Solomon's book called Mishlei, 14th chapter, 34th verse. There, it's a very interesting verse there. It seems like a tremendous contradiction. The beginning of the verse says that charity will uplift a nation. The second half of the same verse says that the charity and the kindness of the nations is a sin. Chatat. Chesed leumim chatat is a sin. What is going on? Make up your mind. Is kindness and charity, is that something that uplifts a person? I would think so. Or is it something that brings a person down? Brings the nations down? How could that be? Very, very strange language. So we have a verse, you think about it. So many people like reading the Bible, but you can't really go anywhere. You can't go anywhere if you don't have the complete story. Complete story means the written and the oral law. Written in the oral law. Because if we go just on the written law, well, you end up, it's a dead end street over there. People have gone down that avenue and we haven't seen them for decades and thousands of years. So here's a beautiful example. The beginning of the verse is a tremendous contradiction to the end of the verse. Is kindness a good thing? Uplifts a person, or it's a sin, brings a person down? Third point I wanted to summarize from our class last week. We saw in the Talmud, tractate Bava Batra, I know it's a mouthful to say, Bava Batra, page 10, side B. We saw there a very interesting dispute. It's a dispute, but it's not a even-handed dispute. Why? Because on my right, weighing in, on my right side we have 5 tremendous sages, Tanaim. Weighing in on my left is 1 tremendous sage, a Tana, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So, what's the dispute here? The dispute is, the sages looked at this verse by King Solomon, Mishlei 14:34, and 5 of the sages said the following: that when a nation, or when an individual of a nation of the world, a Gentile nation, individual Gentile, does an act of kindness, a benevolent, a commendable type of action, it is a sin. How could that be? A person did something commendable. Why isn't he being rewarded? So there's different opinions what the Gentiles' intentions are when they do these good deeds. We saw 5 different opinions. I'll just throw out a few. One was that they themselves should live a long life. Another opinion was that their kingdom, their government should last for a long time. Last opinion that I'm going to mention here is that they do it in order to become haughty, to show that they're better than other people who do not do their acts. You know those people, you walk into a room and there's the big plaques and their name is up in lights and flashing at you? Yeah, they did that big, as long as you put up their name in lights, they'll give you the money. So, according to the 5 sages, an act of kindness on the part of an individual or a nation, there is a chatat, there is a sin. On the other side, weighing in, is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai does not agree. He says that if the nations of the world, whether they're a nation, a community, or an individual, when they do a positive act, doesn't have to be money, it could be time, effort, helping out. If a nation or an individual does a good deed, they will be rewarded for it. They will be rewarded for it. So, we have this argument. What is the conclusion of this argument? Who is right in this argument? Are all of them right? Many times in the Torah, every opinion is a certain angle. They're all correct. You just have to know which angle they're speaking about. Now, the last part of our summary. Open up your ears, sit up in those chairs, listen up closely. To understand this subject and to come to the proper conclusions, we have to understand there's a key word here. In the verse of King Solomon, there is a key word. And the key word is chatat. The kindness, the charity of the nations is a chatat. What in the world does this word mean? And that is why there are different takes, different strokes for different folks. Because that is the question. What in the world does this word chatat, which I would simply explain as a sin, when the nations of the world perform acts of benevolence, this is a sin. So the question is, what is this word chatat? There are various opinions on what it means. Number one, it means, very simple, that the nations of the world, not only do they not receive reward for complementary deeds, it's a sin. Amazing. No reward. They went out, made an effort for somebody. Not only are you not rewarded, but you also get the, boom, boom, smack. Very interesting. Where's this from? One might say, listen, person did not have the proper intentions. In fact, his intentions were not positive, and therefore that's the result. You had ulterior motives, and therefore you don't receive, not only don't you receive a reward, you receive a sin. We saw this last week in a Jewish law, that if a Jew gives charity in order to show off, not only is he not rewarded, but he's punished because of the fact that he's doing it to show others, to be one-upman on other people. So this is not so far-fetched, that if we don't have the proper pure intentions, you lose. That's one possibility. Another explanation, what does chatat, sin, mean? Not what we thought, that if an individual or a nation does a good deed, that they are, that not only are they rewarded, but it's a sin. According to the second angle of understanding this word, it doesn't mean that. It means that it does not atone. A chatat could be a sacrifice. One of the sacrifices when there was a temple in Jerusalem was called chatat, a sin offering. So according to this opinion, that the nations of the world that go out and do complementary acts of charity or kindness, and it is on one hand, it is not an atonement for them. However, they do receive some type of reward. Chatat could also mean lacking. A person, it says in the Torah, it says in the Bible, that a person, when he aims his bow and arrow, and he missed the target. So there's something missing. There's something missing in the Gentile act of kindness, that on one hand, it does not atone for their sins, does not erase them, but on the other hand, there is some type of reward for the effort. It just happens to be, it's not a full reward, because of the fact that there, in the person's intentions, there are many, many things that are lacking. We gave a few examples of different haughty intentions or living a long life. The third take at the word chatat is an amazing take. So once again, we have number one, that it means a sin. Not only aren't you rewarded, but it really is a sin. Why? Because of bad intentions, ulterior motives. Number two, we said it's not considered to be an atonement for a person. It doesn't eliminate, erase various transgressions that they performed. However, there is some type of reward for the nations of the world for those acts of kindness. Why only some degree? Because of the fact that there were ulterior motives. But here's an unbelievable explanation of what is the word chatat. When the nations of the world or individuals perform acts of benevolency, this is a sin. What does it mean? The sin goes on the Jewish people, that when a Gentile community or individual performs acts of kindness and charity, this creates a situation where the Jewish people will be prosecuted. It's a boomerang here against the Jewish people. The word chatat goes on the Jewish people. Amazing. What in the world do I have to do? I, as an individual Jew or a community person, the Jewish community, a village, a nation, a city, what in the world am I connected to the fact that a Gentile somewhere in Kentucky or Mississippi performed some kind of nice act, a kind deed, and all of a sudden the Jewish people are going to pay the price? What in the world is going down here? There is a Jewish law. Okay, that was pretty much a summary of last week's class. Very clear, clarified, crystal clarified this week. Now let's move on. There is a Jewish law. In the Code of Jewish Law, Yoredeah 254. 254 states there that a Jew should not take money, charity, from a non-Jew. There are certain cases where a person is allowed to, if there's a danger to the Jewish people or an individual's life, if they don't take the money, then they're going to be punished, jailed, killed. So there are certain circumstances, for the sake of peace, you are allowed to. But generally speaking, a Jew, whether he's individual or community, should try not to accept charity, money from Gentiles, individuals or nations, communities. Why is that? The question really is the following. According to the 5 sages in the Talmud, Bava Batra 10:2, they told us that when a Gentile does an act of kindness or a benevolence act, not only do they not receive reward, but they're also punished because it's a sin. It's considered to be a sin because of ulterior motives. So why in the world, that's 5 sages against one opinion, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who said they do receive reward. But the majority opinion here is that it is considered to be a sin. They do not receive reward. So let me ask the obvious question. If that's so, why in the world should a Jew be afraid to receive money from a non-Jew? Because if the Gentile receives reward, then I can understand why a Jew should not take that money, because of the fact that God is going to have to pay back that good deed. And therefore, as we said, our last explanation of what the word chatat, sin, means, that it goes on the Jewish people will pay the price of good deeds of the nations. So I can understand. We don't want a boomerang here, that we're going to receive charity from the nations of the world. God will have to bless them. As God said to Abraham, whoever blesses the Jewish people will be blessed. So now God has to go and reward this individual or the nation. And whose expense is it going to be? It's going to be the Jewish people's expense. We're going to pay the price for this guy's good deed. We're going to get hit. I can understand not receiving. But if the final decision of the Talmud is that there not only does a Gentile not receive reward for their good deeds, but they're also punished for them. So therefore, what's the problem for a Jew taking money from a Gentile? There will be no ramifications, consequences for the Jewish people. So take the money and run, baby. That's a question that many of the Jewish law commentators make on this law. So open up the books when you have an opportunity. The Code of Jewish Law 254, Yoredeh. You'll see this question is brought up. What is the problem there? Question. We'll leave it. So folks, we have a lot of questions here. Don't get nervous. Don't be sweating out over there. We will get to every single answer. And I'll even give you, to keep you on your seat, keep you on your toes, I'm even going to give a little hint. We will see basically that, like almost everything in Judaism, every opinion that we mentioned has its validity, depending what the situation may be. So we will see that all these questions that we brought up, all of them are valid questions, and we will see exactly, we will understand when does each law come into practice. So, hold on. We will get to it slowly. Right now, we're going to step one step back, and we're going to take it from the top, as they say in the Holy Land, or was that Hollywood? I don't remember. We will take it from the top. We will quickly, in 60 seconds, we're going to go over 11 incidents that we brought up in our first class. I like that, first class. I hope that all classes here are first class, if you get it. We brought in cases, and we're going to go over most of them and see what's behind them. First case, we saw that Pharaoh accompanied or sent his soldiers to accompany Abraham and Sarah. The Jewish people paid 400 years of slavery in Egypt for that good deed. Number two, Esau cries out when he does not receive his father's blessing. When Yaakov pulls a fast one on his brother, Jacob pulls a fast one, he takes the blessing. Esau cries, and the Jewish people pay for it, are still paying for it till this very day. The king of Moab, Balak, he brings 42 sacrifices, 42 altars in honor of God. What's his reward? One of the rewards that he receives is that 42 Jewish youths years later are blown away in the time of Elisha the prophet. Don't sound too good. Case number 4, Pharaoh, after surrendering to the Jewish people's demands, all of them, he starts escorting the Jewish people out of Egypt. The Torah tells us, it uses a word which shows tremendous pain and strain and bad news for the Jews. What's going on? Pharaoh is escorting the Jewish people. He's doing a beautiful act of kindness, escorting the Jewish people. No one will attack them on the way out of his country. And it's a bad time for the Jews. 5. Another king of Moab. Years later, his name was Eglon. He hears from one of the judges of Israel, I have something holy to tell you. I have the word of God to tell you. The king of Moab stands up. He was a big dude. It wasn't easy for him to stand up, but he did it anyways in order to honor God. He honors God. He's given a reward. From his family comes Ruth. From Ruth came King David, and also a second descendant of his was Orpah. From Orpah came 4 of the biggest anti-Semites against the Jewish people, that fought against the Jewish people tooth and nail. 4 villains of the Jewish people. I don't get it. He does a good deed. He should have just had Ruth. Ruth, I understand. You give him a reward called Ruth. Ruth has King David in her great-grandson. That I understand. But what is this additional baggage here, like bad baggage, of Orpah, where she brings, because of the fact that she also honors her mother-in-law, makes an effort. So the Jewish people suffer by these 4 villains that she brings into the world. What in the world is going on here? 7. The king of Moab, a different one, different era. His name was Mesha. He sacrifices in order to honor God. What he thought was a good idea to honor God was to sacrifice one of his sons. And the fact that he went to sacrifice his son and honored God in his warped understanding, the Jewish people were punished. It says in the Torah, Bible, that there was tremendous amount of anger that God poured out against the Jewish people. Because somebody went, some king of a nation, Gentile, went and honored God. The prophet Jonah, he refuses to go to the city of Nineveh, a city of 120,000 inhabitants. Why? Because Jonah knew that if he went there and he gave a speech to the Gentiles very easily are persuaded. Unlike the Jews, who are stiff-necked people, it's hard to talk them in. It's hard to convince them. Once you convince them, you got them. Once you convince them, there's nothing to hold them back. But until you get to that point, it's not easy. But the nations of the world are softer. There's more gigabytes available to hear the message. So he's worried that if the Gentiles listen to him, he's sure that they will listen to him and they will repent. Who's going to pay the price? The Jewish people are going to pay the price. What in the world what's going on over here? Don't we want all the nations to repent? Isn't this a great thing for the Jewish people? Why do we have to pay the price? Why should we pay the price? What's the deal? 9. King of Babylonia. Oh, we finally got off that Moab track. Yeah, that Moab train. We're on the Babylonian train. It reminds me of like a Bob Marley song. On the river of Babylon. Yeah, remember that one? I think Bob Marley. Okay. The king of Babylonia, Nebuchadnezzar. It's a long story, and we're just summarizing here. So, he takes 3 steps. He takes 3 steps in honor of God's name. 3 steps, not a big deal, right? Because of these 3 steps, God honors him to destroy the temple. Wow! Did a good deed. He went to honor God. Who pays the price one more time? Another one bites the dust. Yeah, the Jewish people pay the price. 10. The king of Babylonia has a terrible dream. He sees that his kingdom is coming to an end, is crushed down. He comes to one of his advisors, Daniel, my brother. He comes to Daniel, my brother, you are older than me. And he says, what should I do here? And Daniel suggests to give charity. Well, he goes and gives charity, and the suggestion of Daniel, and the sages tell us that Daniel was punished for giving him, and therefore the evil kingdom continued, and the Jewish people suffered for another year. What in the world is going on? The king is giving charity by the advice of Daniel. Daniel is punished for giving that advice, and who pays the price? The Jewish people during that year are suffering under his reign. Last but not least, we have the daughter of Pharaoh. King Solomon marries the daughter of Pharaoh. She converts to Judaism, a beautiful act. Okay, she converts to Judaism. And when that marriage happens, we know the sages tell us that was the beginning of the end of the temple. That was the beginning of the end of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. What is going on over here? This beautiful woman, she comes to convert what was going on, a tremendous act of sacrifice, and once again, the Jewish people are paying the price over here. Okay, so let's take it from the top. First source is the holy Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna. Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, otherwise known as the Gra, on his commentary to the work of Mishle, 1434, should sound familiar by now. Listen to what he says. Listen to every word that he says. When the nations of the world do kind acts of kindness, not only does Hashem, God, uplift them, does He bring them up, success, ruling, reigning, government. It all, not only does God bring them up, but what does He do to the Jewish people? He brings the nation of Israel is brought down to the gutter. Amazing. We know there's a principle. When Isaac blessed his son Jacob, he told him that if the Jewish people, or if Jacob and the Jewish people, if they're going the correct path, if they're doing the right thing, then they will be on top. And the nations of the world, Esav, they will be on the bottom. It is a seesaw. There's no such thing as being in the middle. It's either going to be the Jewish people on top and the nations of the world subservient, or the opposite. The nations of the world on top reigning, the Jewish people are being subservient. So that is what the Holy Gra is saying. The fact that the nations, individuals or communities, perform acts of benevolence, God uplifts them, God brings them up, God brings them success. And He brings the Jewish people, okay, it's considered to be a boomerang against the Jewish people. This was our third explanation. When it says that the charity that the nations of the world do is a sin, we said on the third opinion, and unbelievable, that it's a sin for the Jewish people. The Jewish people pay the price for the fact that the non-Jews are going out and doing good deeds. This takes away the merit of the Jewish people. Got it? So God must uplift the nations of the world for doing acts of charity and kindness, and therefore this brings down the Jewish people. Why? Because God has to pay the nations of the world in this world. The payback is in this world, not in the true world. In the world to come, no. It's in this world. And the reward of a commandment is so great, and God must pay them while they're still around in this world kicking. So the reward is so great of one commandment that once they do it, they receive tremendous amount of control, power, reign, government. Against who? Against the Jewish people. Amazing. And he brings an example of the king of Babylonia who for 3 lousy steps that he took to honor God, 3 steps. We're not talking about some kind of hike, 50-mile hike here. We're talking about 3 steps. God gave him the reward that he would be the ruler and he would be the one that would destroy the Jewish people's temple in Jerusalem and exile the Jewish people. Think about that. What a tremendous reward that he received for 3 lousy steps. And the Jewish people pay the price. Why do the Jewish people pay the price? Remember that song? Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. So if you do the crime, you do the time. Why do I have to pay the price? The answer is very simple. When the nations of the world do acts that are commendable, charitable, benevolent, honoring God, at the same time, God checks out where do the Jewish people stand on this totem pole. The nations of the world are going out and they're doing commendable acts of kindness. So right then and there, the spotlight switches on the Jewish people and we are judged. The Jewish people are judged. It's not just on Rosh Hashanah. The Jewish people are judged every single day. We wish there was a judgment only on Rosh Hashanah. We wish. But that's not the way it is. It says in the Talmud the Jewish people are judged every single day. So therefore, once a Gentile, individual, or a nation do acts of kindness, commendable acts, right then and there, God wants to see where the Jewish people stand on this issue. If it's an issue that the nations of the world go out and honor God, then God is going to check how the Jewish people honor God. They're going to be judged against the deeds of the nations, of the commendable deeds. So therefore, if the Jewish people at that time in history are not on par with the nations of the world or individuals of the nations, they're going out, they're sacrificing themselves, they're putting their backs on the line, and then God looks at the same time at the Jewish people and he wants to know, in this area that the Gentiles are perfecting, what is going on in the Jewish community on this issue? What is going on within the Jewish community? That is why most times everybody, is cheering. They're cheering for Trump and he did this good deed and America is the kingdom of kindness. Think about what those words mean. Think about what those words mean. I'm not right now going, and we'll perhaps discuss that later. Is that true at all? Is America the kingdom of kindness? As many rabbis have commented about America. Is that true or not? It's not my point right now. But many people believe that. And definitely, there are many, many individual deeds or even community deeds that are commendable. But think in these terms. Once an individual, once a community or a nation, when they perform acts of kindness, who's going to pay the price for the acts of kindness if the Jewish people are not on par with the nations of the world or the individuals? The Jewish people will pay a dear price. We saw here 3 lousy steps from the king of Babylonia for the sake to honor God. 3 lousy steps. The Jewish people, if we're not up there with the Jones, if we're not on par with the Jones, we're going to pay a price. And the cases that I mentioned, which are many, the Jewish people were not on par with those actions that the nations or individuals committed. And therefore, we paid dearly for this. So the next time you start getting a big smile on your face, instead of a big smile, you better start waking up. This is a wake-up call. Before, I mentioned this in passing, whenever I hear of an individual of the nations that goes out and does a good act, or sacrifices himself for the sake of God, or the honor of God, or does a commendable act, puts himself on herself on the line, I always, first thing, I look for that person's phone number, and I call them, and I said, you know what? Really, people that the people that really should have done this are the Jewish people. The Jewish people are we are the bearers of God's testimony. We are God's people. And we should be the ones that are going out there and doing these actions. And therefore, I get worried, and therefore I call these people. And I give them a little bit of a reward to take off their reward against the Jewish people. Eliminate it somehow by saying thank you for going out there and doing that. So this is a tremendous gra, Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, talking about the boomerang theory. The boomerang theory. An amazing take. Abraham, after leaving the land of Israel, Canaan, he leaves the land of Israel and he goes with his wife to Egypt where there's food and there's no famine. Sarah's kidnapped by the king of Pharaoh. Pharaoh is punished, and all of the kingdom, they're punished with tremendous skin diseases and illnesses. And then he returns, he finds out that Sarah is married to Abraham. He returns her. Not only does he return, but he also escorts them. He also sends his soldiers to escort. And it says in the Talmud, because of this escort that he sent, the Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt for 400 years for this act of kindness that Pharaoh did. Listen to this, an amazing take. Where on the commentary of the Or HaChama, on the tractate of Sota, the 47th page, says the following: what in the world, why is Abraham punished that Abraham's descendants are going to be enslaved for 400 years because of the fact that this Pharaoh dude sends out his army to escort the Jewish people for four, for 4 lousy, whatever, kilometers or whatever, how long it was. And an amazing take. He says, yeah, you got it right. God came to Abraham and said, listen, you made a mistake here, Abraham. Mistake? What mistake did I make? You made a mistake here. You should have refused to receive an escort from Pharaoh and his nation. You should have refused. Why? Because we see that in the time of Jacob, when they meet up after 36 years, they meet up again. Esav wants to escort Jacob. Jacob says, no way, you're not going to escort me. He refuses to take the escort. Why? Because Abraham should have known, just like Jacob knew, that when you take charity, when you receive a gift, there's a price tag on every single gift from the nations of the world. There's a price tag. Not only the price tag of a Trump that tells us, not even embarrassed, he tells us, well, we moved our embassy, thank you very much. Wow, did we need that embassy? We need his recognition like we need blank. Well, we gave you that embassy and now you're going to have to pay up a heavy price when we come down to those peace negotiations. You're going to have to pay in the land of Israel because we moved our damn embassy, praise the Lord, to your city. We recognize you. Oh man, somebody recognizes me. No one recognizes me. I'm a nobody. I'm a zero. I'm one of these doormats. And somebody finally recognizes me. Somebody's looking at me. Wow, thank you so much. I have no self-worth, no self-respect. So the Or HaChama, the commentary, says an unbelievable. Jacob knew that there's a price tag, there's interest. No nation does a good act of kindness if there's not some kind of price tag that's going along with it. And if it's not today, you're going to pay later. It's like those credit cards, you go to all these stores, and well, you're just buying it up, the credit card deficits in the world. But one day, and the 15th of the month, that bill comes by. Oh my God, where am I going to get the money to pay this? So there's pay up time. So Or HaChama says that Abraham should have known better. He made a mistake here. Just like the Jewish law states, do not receive charity, do not receive kindness from the nations of the world, because it's going to be used as a boomerang if the Jewish people do not stand up to the standards that the nations or the individuals by their good deeds are fulfilling. Then the Jewish people are going to have to pay the price. And therefore, if Abraham would have refused the escort, the kindness of Pharaoh, then God would not have to pay and reward Pharaoh. And therefore, the Jewish people would not have been subservient in Egypt. It could be that in the land of Israel, as Nachmanides, Ramban writes, that if the Jewish people were worthy, we could have done the exile in the land of Israel, which is a different story. Imagine that, like you're in your home court and, you're paying some time or doing some service for somebody, but at least you're at your home court. So the fact is that Abraham had the opportunity to make sure that this Pharaoh would not receive reward. But he did not. He took the escort. So when we want to put the cards on the table, what reward are we going to give God? What is He going to give? We said in the name of the Gra, Rabbi Eliyahu from Vilna, we say that it's a tremendous price because the nations of the world have to be paid back in this world. It's not like a Jew who's paid back only interest in this world for their good deeds, but the principle is saved for the world of eternity. But here we got to pay him back fast, and we got to pay him big bucks. In God we trust, others pay cash. It's big time here. So, what are we going to give a Gentile, an individual, or a nation? What are we going to give them that's going to be a tremendous reward? Power. Sovereignty over others. Amazing. Think about it. The Jewish people, Abraham accepts an escort from Pharaoh. We got to pay him back because he did a good deed. How are we going to pay him back? The Gentiles, they understand we want power. We want to be the CEOs. We want to control. We want to have others to be subservient to us. That is what they're after. And that's what they get. But it's a two-way street. They control, but you need those to be controlled. Welcome the Jewish people to be controlled by the controllers. Amazing. If you're still sitting, more power to you. Okay. This is also brought down. This is also brought down by the Rif. He agrees to this principle that Abraham should have refused to accept this kindness of an escort from Pharaoh. Should have said, thank you, but no thanks. I'm going. If you think about it, in Judaism, escorting someone is a big deal. It's an obligation. Why? Because if you escort somebody, then you know that someone's at your back. You know not to mess. There was a case in Crown Heights about a week ago. There were two women that were out Saturday night and they said goodbye to each other on a corner there. One went to the right and one went to the left. Once they separated from each other, one of the Jewish women was jumped by two Gentiles, beat up, and had her purse and money stolen. So, what is an escort? An escort shows that somebody is looking out for your back. Somebody's escorting you. You don't mess with my guest. You don't mess with them. I'm here. We have people